All right. I want to know who is the GOAT of modern psychology.
Okay.
So you have, obviously, there's Freud.
Yeah. Who
Right.
started everything.
And then there's Jung. Mm-hmm. And then there's Alfred Adler.
Okay.
And I feel like more people probably know, obviously everyone knows Freud. Most people have heard of Jung.
Yeah.
Less people have heard of Alfred Adler.
Yeah.
But most people in modern psychology and most psychologists would agree that those are not the founding fathers, but are the biggest influences to modern psychology.
Yeah, and psychoanalysis.
Yeah. So is there one that you can disregard and follow two schools of thought, Freudian and Jungian? Or, can you lean just on Alfred Adler? Like, who is the greatest of all time when it comes to these three influential people in psychology?
Yeah, who really changed the foundation of how we look at the human mind.
Yeah.
And I think to start first with any of them is definitely the day and time they were in was highly tense.
Sure.
And very dark. Well,
disclaimer. Yeah, we can. And that's the thing. It's like when you talk about anyone, it's like you can talk about the ideas that people propagated without worshiping every single action that they took throughout their entire life.
Yeah, look at Ye.
Or don't.
Or don't look at them.
Yeah.
But either way, yes, it's separating the schools of thought and the things they've created and brought to the body of knowledge for humans versus not discussing and not talking about every single bad thing.
And we've talked about this where it's I've talked with psychologists who have said I don't listen to, read, or talk about anything that has to do with Nietzsche or Freud because they're both misogynistic.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect example. It's if you're a practicing psychologist and you just throw out an entire school of thought because someone did something that you disagree with, let's be adults here is what we're saying.
You're just discounting all the actual work that still went into them discovering a large part of what we did not understand back in the day.
Right, exactly. So, okay, so let's get into it. So basically the things we want to talk about in this video is, the things we want to cover here are really who is the GOAT of modern psychology. Then we want to get into the background of each. I made a pretty little table here I'm going to refer to, but you're a little bit more
I need to
high
type.
tech. Yeah, you're high speed, so you can jump into that. I've got my analog display here. And then the greatest books from each of them, which are basically just fully biased from our own opinions, because that's worth something, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe not. And then we've got the people I wrote predecessors. What I meant to say was the people that came after them, the people that they inspired afterwards, which I also think is interesting actually because of who inspired who. Obviously Freud inspired Jung and Adler, which we'll get into, but then Adler then being kind of the forefather of CBT and REBT and a lot of the positive psychology that people prescribe to today. But I digress. So then after that, we want to get into basically just a summary of each and kind of how we think about each of them in a simple framework, I guess you could say.
Well, yeah, it's concise summarization because we're not going to be able to cover every single thing they thought, did, and acted on because, my goodness, it's large. And I didn't go to university for that, so, or at all. But.
Yeah, or at all. So, and that's an important caveat as well, is that we're basically just being curious about this. At the end of the day, I think taking a lot of these ideas, number one, I think anything that has to be gatekept by institutions is probably kind of BS anyways. I think that you can learn a lot from reading their works. I mean, in a lot of their cases, some of them have spent decades and decades and decades to make a single book.
Yeah.
So for us, for them to disseminate that knowledge, us to then consume it and then interpret it, I think is, I think that's what people basically should do.
I think one of my favorite quotes that gave me a lot of peace a few years ago is actually from Ray Dalio, who says all the time, I'm genuinely a dumb shit. Yeah. I do dumb things and I don't know what's relative to what I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's just, we're all just learning.
Exactly.
I'm trying my best.
Yeah, yeah. If a hedge fund billionaire can have such humility, I think that there's something to be learned from that. But okay, so let's talk about the kind of the background of each. So Freud, obviously known for
unconscious and conscious, him discovering the fact that humans we're not free agents like we all thought we were. We weren't in control
Right.
of our emotions and our actions in the ways that like we really before his time did.
Right.
So that leaning into so much drive
Yeah.
of like irrational human behavior. And yes, he got, I think like both of them, because Jung did the same of like primitive mind,
Right.
where it's just like it was poor, not poor descriptors, but again, this was all new.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
them
yeah.
trying their best to like try and describe what was going on. But I think even
Yeah, the public didn't really receive it well when they're like, yeah, your animal side. They're like, I'm not like, no,
I'm
we're,
not
we're
animal-
civilized. Like
Yeah.
this is like Vienna and everyone's like dancing and we're in like beautiful ballrooms. Like, what are you talking about? Like
Yeah.
animal, like, yeah. So, but I mean, in their defense, they were better at psychology and uncovering psychology than they were branding. Let's say.
they didn't have a PR manager yet.
Yeah,
what was
not
his
yet.
name again?
Edward Bernays.
Yes.
Who was also not a successor, but he came after. He was actually Freud's nephew,
Yeah.
who did actually create public relations, which turned
Exactly.
into modern day marketing.
But they didn't have him.
No, they didn't have him yet. He figured that all out later. Not for the betterment of mankind, I'll say. Obviously, attributing to modern day consumerism, which wouldn't exist without that one
Individual.
gentleman. But neither here nor there. So I think I kind of wrote down some kind of key outlines, I think, from each. So for Freud, I had founder of psychoanalysis, the unconscious mind, dream interpretation, id, ego, superego, childhood development, and talk therapy, which is, by the way, just crazy. It's just like one of those things. Like if he just came up with like the id, the ego, the superego, it's like lifetime
That
work.
alone.
Like it's like, sweet, your job here is done. Like that alone, which is again when people discredit for like, they're like, oh, you got these 3 things wrong. And so like he completely revolutionized the way that we think about ourselves. I guess, I don't know if psyche was, I think that was
no,
Jung,
it would have
right?
been like human psyche
Okay.
because this is even, again, when you take in the context, like this is before any neuroscience, before we knew about our reptilian brains, about our
Mm-hmm. Right.
prefrontal cortex, which again is all of what they're describing without the
Right.
science that
Right.
now can back it up
Right.
and has been proven. But again, you're just making things up back, not
Literally.
making, like you're
And-
going through
and
clinical studies.
There's a caveat there where it's like the Sir Isaac Newton, like if I can see further, it's only by standing on the shoulders of giants. Like Freud did say, he literally said, he's like, if, what did he say?
I don't know the exact quote you're thinking of.
He
You want me
said
to look it up?
everywhere I've been, a poet had been there before me. So like he did, so it's like, to be fair,
They
it's like,
understood.
yeah, Lucretius and Aristotle, like it's not as if he's like coming from literally no basis of understanding of human knowledge. It's like, but the point is that these terms, these thoughts, the way of packaging them and like the way of disseminating that information had never existed before in any capacity.
Yeah, because and I would be so imposed to like ask other people and more philosophical, like giants back during the Renaissance time. But was there any kind of discussion of unconscious? Do you think during like
It's
I'd
so
have to go
like,
back and dig?
It's almost like in the way that like in modern day, like Daniel Kahneman's a good example of that. Like his entire book, Thinking Fast and Slow, System 1 thinking, System 2 thinking, it's like he's basically just like making a distinction between the conscious thought and the unconscious thought.
you're just
so it's like,
renaming
are we
stuff.
saying it without saying it? So it's like, has that been said throughout history, throughout like the entire body of knowledge up until this point, including like the Alexandria library of that everything's, bit. So it's like, tough to say, like I'd have to go look, I guess, but I don't know.
Anyway,
but going back to Jung now, so that's what Freud is known for. So Jung, on the other hand, collective unconscious, archetypes, the shadow, individuation, dream analysis, personality types, active imagination, and synchronicity. So among other things, to be fair. So those are kind of the key things that I jotted down that I think Jung is really known for. And then I want to get into Alfred Adler briefly as well. So with Adler, he came up with the inferiority complex, striving for superiority, birth order theory, social interest, lifestyle, and goal-oriented behavior. So, I mean, again, you can already kind of like zoom out. It's
and
like
see.
there's a lot going on here. By the way, arguably not a ton that's happened since, especially from like first order connections. Like it's like the people that, and again, we'll get into this, but Adler obviously inspiring Maslow, Viktor Frankl, Albert Ellis, Aaron Beck, creators of REBT, CBT, so cognitive behavioral therapy, and rational emotive behavioral therapy, rational emotive Behavioral therapy, yeah. So with not a lot of people, it's like completely changed like our entire world around thought.
Yeah. Well, the human psyche and how to manage emotions, how to regulate, like we have gotten so much further than what we were 100 years ago. But in the last stretch of like, let's say 30 years.
Yes. Okay, but we want to know who the GOAT is. Can we just subscribe and prescribe to just one of them or two of them? Do we need all of them? So like, let's drill down and get into it. So first of all, their greatest book. So we're readers. Like I'm a big reader. You're a big reader. Like we get a lot of our, you more so. You're more like of a kinetic and like visual learner. So a lot of like YouTube. Now you're doing your thing with
presentations and lectures. Yeah, I definitely need visual aspects.
So for me, maybe a little bit more on just like the hard book side. So I mean, for me, this actually all started when I got into Civilization and Its Discontents by Freud, is where I really got like turned on to this whole space. And Civilization Discontents, I would say, is, at least for me, very biased, but like that is the all-time standout book for Freud. I think it covers everything in there. The key idea around that too being that like you have to really understand your environment and what's going on around you to understand what's happening in you, which is also contrary to basically Jung and Adler. But I think it's an interesting point of debate, and I think it's an interesting frame regardless.
Yeah.
And so it's like the idea, like I guess if you could sum it up, I don't know if I could sum it up in like a tight paragraph, but it's the idea that like we disturb ourselves in three different ways. So there's circumstance, others, and then self. So everything comes down to
going fast.
But there's our environment, right? And then our circumstances, the conditions around it. Those things all create disturbances. Then we have other people and our relationships to them, expectations,
relationship, work.
100%. And then after that, then it's ourself, right? So it's like our own beliefs about like what we should be doing. If why haven't we achieved X by Y? Right. So like those are really fundamental. And then so his whole argument is that we have created a society and a world in which we're trying to solve for those things and try to make them irrelevant. So for example, it starts with weather and environment, right? So it's like we build homes, problem solved. Okay, well now we need bigger homes. And then we need cities and bigger cities. And now all these problems disseminate now from metropolitan cities.
Yeah.
Right? And then we do the same thing with relationships. So then it's like, oh, it's so nice. I can FaceTime my family at home. And it's just like, oh, isn't that nice? And it's just like, well, before we created automotive and transportation and planes and all these things, it's like we were just at home.
Yeah, which is community-based. Well, it was just...
Yeah, and then so the same idea with ourselves, that, there's all these remedies, and it's just like, but we didn't have any of these problems to need the remedies before. So the point is that the whole idea of Civilization and Its Discontents is that we are trying to basically solve these three fundamental issues by creating new issues around them.
Yeah.
So we're constantly just in this state of unhappiness and neurosis. Anyways, that's a really interesting book. That's his number one for me. What you go for, Carl Jung.
Let me touch on Civilizations and Discontent.
Okay, yeah, we'll take it from there. I mean, I thought I covered it.
So I had pulled out, and basically that society functions if individuals act on every impulse. So the superego, both individual and collective, which by the way, reinforces and reinstates through guilt. And again, a lot of his points did you find in his book? Because again, a lot of stuff that even Adler would point out with Freud is he had gotten so deep and dark with humans and really saw it from a lens of all these negative attributes and obviously these instincts that he kept finding, one, mainly sexual, which a part of it, definitely not all of it. Do not disappear when suppressed. They turn inward, producing a chronic low-grade psychological suffering that's the price of social life.
Right.
So... And then the more complex civilization gets, the more reinduction demanded and the more deeper discontent for life, which I can in part agree with what we've started to see now with megacities and how much when we go back on an anthropology lens, people were better in tribalistic, people are better in smaller settings and communities because trying to grasp a whole world. And I think this is what he was starting to see during this book, is he was really seeing all the globalism start to take place and how much it was too big and too much for the human mind.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Well, literally being maybe we're better off being in a tribal culture going back in time.
Yeah.
And that's actually when men can be happy because, his argument at the end of the book is that basically man is doomed to be miserable so long as that there is society and civilization. It's only in tribes that we can thrive and be happy. That's the whole...
Now, I'd be intrigued though, because then again, you have the same time, yes, you can only like be happy if happiness is the goal, which we can talk about in a completely different thing. But then how did he see humanity progressing? Because like, I don't think humanity as a whole could progress in the ways that we make the technological advancements, in the way communications improved, in our infrastructure sharing from so many different groups. So it's such a catch-22 that like, for the individual, it's better to go tribal. For humanity, it is probably better to work as a whole.
And you know that that's true because that's what's happening.
Yes.
So I mean, that's the truth is in the answer because it's the outcome for. So obviously, like that is the case. But it's interesting because it makes me think of Nietzsche saying like it's like be careful when you stare at the abyss because it'll stare back at you. And that's actually like a good analogy of psychology at its whole, which is what is interesting, bringing that full circle to Adler and then positive psychology as a consequence of Adler, because it is goal-oriented, whereas Freud was very much what's happened before and behind you
is defining your life.
Exactly. Whereas, Adler ended up being the opposite to that. But Jung was a really interesting bridge, I think, kind of between both schools of thought. So Jung's most impactful, important book, you think?
Probably, it's tough to say because again, some of his, I think Man and His Symbols for one of his first books, just because of how much it had led to then Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. And really, as much as he had this like very complex relationship with religion and spirituality, he very much did see that in the mythos of like all humanity and past life, humans have this relation to the supernatural. And I think he was more in touch with that than Freud and Adler ever were. And where he got most of his discredit from was because then everyone started to call him a mystic, esoterical, all of these things, just because one, some of his stuff like wasn't able to be fully tracked through clinical trials. But there's a quote, and I wish I could like pull it off the top of my head, but I know you would probably know it, where it's like you need some faith, you need some belief. Like a part of the human experience is having that.
That's even in the Man and His Symbols.
Yes.
Where it's like he talks about that, where it's just like both take a belief, right? It's like you either have to believe in that there's nothing, or you have to believe in that there is something, and the benefit of believing in that there is something is greater as like a net outcome than believing in nothing. So it's like, paraphrasing, of course, but to your exact point, that's exactly it.
So, anyway, back on that book of, the unconscious communicates through images, dreams, myth, and cultural symbols. It covers the nature of archetypes. So, just that humans have always and forever will be storytelling creatures. And I think Jung just understood this more, and as much as, again, like the science, because science is also a belief. Like, that's...
Well, and to be fair, it's like, going back to that Freud quote, where it's like a poet was there before me. Like, I mean, literally quantum physics. It's like Lucretius was talking about this 2,400 years ago, and now they're getting excited today. They're like, oh, wow, we found like, like that there is a quantum entanglement, that everything's vibrating, constantly moving. It's just like, guys, like Lucretius and Epicurus knew this before Jesus.
Well, and that's where quantum entanglement's a great thing for synchronicity. Like, and synchronicity is how I was first introduced to Jung, where when I was even young, it just happened so often, and it's only ever happened with my mom, and now you, which is really nice, which is like, I would think of her, and the second I thought of her, she called me, and it happened all the time, and I could not understand it, and I just was like, we would just joke and say, like, get out of my head. And so it's just, I understand, and that's why I love his stuff, as much as, like, it is the mythos. It is the human spirit. It is so much more an essence of the human experience, because not everything's quantifiable and data points. We're not computers or machines in my eyes. Like, we are a soul having a human experience, not a human having a soul experience.
Whereas Freud was much more, like, he hated that. That was where the schism originated from, because Jung believed that to his core and couldn't sleep because he was staying quiet about it. And Freud was like, no, there's order. This is the system. There's a way. There's an explanation. And he was very type A about it, whereas Jung was much more creative about it.
Yes. And again, even to his term of like then having creative imagination, which spewed off into, and as much as people can have their takes on Napoleon Hill, Neville Goddard, all of them, it is still to me like there's some truth to everything. like always. And
Exactly.
if it resonates for so many humans, there's something to it.
Well, I like what Maslow says about this later, Abraham Maslow, right? Hierarchy of needs. Like he talks about where it's just like, don't think of anything that I'm saying as like truth or evidence or fact or any. It's like go into yourself, apply it, see if it works for you. If it does, and it is true, if it's true for you, then you know it's true. But it's just like, don't take my word for it. And it's just like, it's like, be your own student, right? I mean, Emerson talks about that in American Scholar, where it's just like, you can't just parrot people's idea. And that's the thing, like, I think Freud almost wanted his, the people he was influencing to parrot his ideas and just kind of be a messenger of his core message. Whereas like, it's like, that's not how we work.
Well, and funny enough, as someone who discovered the superego and the ego, he really let his ego get in the way of a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so Alfred Adler. So, okay, you're gonna have to slow me down again, 'cause I'm gonna get excited.
You're gonna get so hyped on him.
This is my boy Adler here. So actually, I only actually recently, weirdly enough, discovered Adler probably like 3 years ago. So it's like you're saying, where there's a lot of overlap in those the people who are like disseminating, you know, these positive messages. So psycho-cybernetics. Tons of Alfred Adler references and quotes in there, as well as Emerson, funny enough.
Yeah.
And so I had always like heard about Adler like second and third hand, but had never read him directly. And then someone recommended The Courage to be Disliked, which is essentially, that's almost like like Plato's and Socrates dialogue, where it's like as if it's a conversation observed between like a we'll call it like a student and a professor,
his teacher,
mentor,
mentor,
and so I read that and I was like, oh wow, okay, like this is true, this is like really good, and it's easy to read, and there's tons of almost like it's like controversial topics in a way, and like ways of thinking and things. And I'll give you one example. So one with Adler is that like your past, again, going back to Freud believed like what happened in your past determines your future. Adler was very much like, no, we actually decide our future because we're goal oriented, and like what's behind us like has much less of an imprint on us than Freud would have us believe. So one is actually more about agency, and one's like more determinism. So the way that it's framed, though, people misinterpret and like take that, you know, in the wrong way, where it's just like, oh, so someone can just, like, because the example in Courage to be Disliked is like, if I have a bad relationship with my father, I have a birthday coming up, I don't want to invite him to my birthday. And it's like, I don't want to invite him to my birthday because he used to, whatever, mistreat me as a kid, right? So then it's just like, well, Adler would say, no, you don't want to invite him to your birthday because you would have to put in the energy to repair that relationship. Well, so it's always looking forward, right? Which is like controversial for some people. They don't like people don't like agency sometimes, right? So it'll ruffle some feathers in kind of an ironic way. But I would say, so his book for me is definitely understanding human nature. Like it's all in there. So like I think, so inferiority complex is in there, striving for superiority is in there, birth order is in there, social interest is a big part of it, lifestyle is a big part of it, and goal-oriented behavior is a massive part of it. Like I think it just encapsulates everything. And Alfred Adler's, when you read Jung, he, like Freud too, honestly, like Freud borders on poetry. Which
I haven't read as much of, I was like, I haven't read as much, but.
Like very few people talk about that. Like Jung is like borders more on like almost like religious. When you read it, like it reads almost like a religious text sometimes.
But I would say the same for Jung. Like at certain points, you're just like,
well, no, that's what
poetic.
I'm saying. Yeah,
it's
like
all
Jung, but like I would say like Freud's like very poetic. Like there's just such a breadth, and like there is so much.
Would you say it's almost because it's deriving so much from his experience because he was so in it, so it is really coming from like a lived, in-person, like felt experience? Like he's not just talking about it for the sake of what he is talking about.
Like Adler?
No, but well, both of them, like Freud as well. If it's poetic, it's coming from a place of like what first was probably suffering and pain and discomfort to then change and become and have more compassion and understanding for humanity, where he could see. But this is the interesting point, and this is the point that with Adler. So he's not really like that. Like he's like much more. It's much more kind of like a.
it's almost like a prescription. Like it just reads easy. So it's like you don't have to. It doesn't. It's very just like layman's terms in a way, like it's the common man, if you will.
Well, I was just about to say his whole point and a lot of his philosophy in psychology and psychoanalyst was he wanted to bring it to the common man. That was his goal. He didn't want it to be gatekept with clinicians that only you could understand or only these people could help you and do this. He wanted to put power into normal people. And so, funny enough, that's exactly why his books are actually written that way. He had like clearly stated multiple times, he's like, this is like my gift to people. Like, this is how you can help yourself.
Right.
And yeah.
It's funny. So, I mean, obviously, like, is effective then, because I mean that's how I interpret it. So yeah, so I mean let's get into, I think those are the greatest books. Let's get into who each of these people influenced. So I know you have some notes.
I don't have nearly as much as you.
No? Okay.
For like who they influenced?
Yeah, so okay, I wrote down a couple. So for Freud, and these are the big ones, and like there's so many, but these are the ones that stood out to me. So I just, briefly, well, number one, it's like you have to obviously like reinstate. I mean, I don't think you can overstate his importance on influencing Jung and Adler.
Yeah.
Basically, those are the two that stand out above all. After that, you have Erik Erikson, you have Edward Bernays, and you have Herbert Marcuse, which is which are all, like, they also all reshaped our understanding of human nature.
I also want to take in super quick to sidebar it that I would love to get into on a different video, the women during those times that were in the institute that got erased, and like even Jung's wife, who he cheated on, who like was very much part of his collaborator, like all the incredible women, but like I think should just be saved for a different video.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, so yeah, continue on the people they had, because I was like, it's a lot of men.
Yeah. And So Erik Erikson, so I actually know less about Erik Erikson than some of these names that we're talking about here. But Edward Bernays is he was the nephew of Freud. He literally came to America, stole all of Freud's ideas, if you will, and then was like, hey, you know what? I wonder if we could use this to motivate people to go die in a trench. It was something that's objectively like not good for them, which is like I don't know if you know this, but like going to war is bad for your health. Yeah. And he was like, you know what? It's like, since we proved that we could get people to do that, like they'll die for country and nation, which we installed in them, literally came up with the term engineered consent, right? And then he's like, if we can go get them to do that, we could probably get them to do anything. And since the industrial age was basically
kicking off in America.
It's like, okay, well, you know what we could do is we can tie democracy to consumerism.
Yep.
So that bridge, it's like people just believe that that's a thing that exists, that's like no one questions that. It's just like, well, that was created actually by Edward Bernays. So sort of interesting because, I mean, I would say, you can watch the documentary online. Like, he looks like a vile creature, and like that's not something I would say.
No, but
I'm not out here throwing stones, but like he looks like a reptile.
Like, I was just about to make the joke of like, if the conspiracy theory of people being lizard people was real, he would definitely be on my list.
If there was
if you were a lizard,
if there was one lizard, it's like it was.
It's Rockefeller, or not Rockefeller, Rothschild.
Yeah.
Who's the one that is so old?
I don't know. There's a lot of lizard-looking folk out there that are not doing objectively good things
probably just, again, life force being drained of them for doing such awful things to humanity, TBH.
Yeah. And so anyways, so Edward Bernays is one of them. But then, funny enough, then Herbert Marcuse being, or Marcuse, I don't so he's on the flip side of that, which is also interesting because he was actually much more wholesome. He was very like, not fully human. What was his? But it was
integrated human.
Integrated human, like he was pro-human. He was a humanism. Yeah. Like so, it's like he was the opposite of Edward Bernays, which I think is interesting. So it's like Freud kind of had like a bit of there was a lot of little microschisms going on there.
I just think, again, to actual personal experience, like who you are at your core, like this kind of stuff will show you your true human nature and like your view on it, and like that Freud could be seen in a neutral lens for a lot of his stuff, like conscious and subconscious. Like that is all neutral, and then what people took from that and decided what to do with it really showed where they saw humanity and what they could like either do to help or do to destroy. And it's you need polarities. Like that is actually the most natural cause of what it came from this. Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it. And then Carl Jung, so he obviously influenced. Yeah. Oh, you want me to... Joseph Campbell, of course, biggest and like most, which then crazy. It's so funny because people will take Joseph Campbell's the hero's journey and Hero of a Thousand Faces.
Right.
And what I think is interesting and funny, like, side note of it is I get annoyed when they're like, oh, well, that like showed all of or that influenced George Lucas with Star
I know, they're
Wars.
just like, it's narrative structure.
But it's also but not even that. I was like, Dune came before that. I was like, how many books came before? Also, humanistically wrote the hero's journey subconsciously.
It was because George Lucas made it so famous. He studied Joseph Campbell for so long. Star Wars became the biggest.
I know,
thing
but that's what like bugs. I was like, the
Yeah.
hero's journey, and that is the whole point of this. Of it was just putting to words what has always been there.
Yeah.
And you go back to ancient civilizations and many religions of
you don't
having
have to.
the hero's
Joseph Campbell
journey.
did.
I know. He showed us with. He did them all.
Yeah.
But yeah, doing like Epic of Gilgamesh, you go back
Yeah.
to ancient Egyptian times of like Osiris and Horus, and
Yeah.
it's retold a million times in human civilization.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jung had mainly pulled all of that and created and then Joseph Campbell showed us the monomyth.
Yeah, and then Eric Newman after that also, like the foreword for Eric Newman's book,
The History
and Origins of Consciousness.
Incredible book.
Crazy foreword too in it of itself, where it's like Carl Jung literally says like, this is the work that I wish that I was able to produce. Right.
Well, yeah, because I think again in History and Origins of Consciousness, as much as it still has like the aspect of mysticism, it doesn't, because
it's much more grounded.
Yeah, it is much more like, hey, here are the symbols that like show up in this way, and this is why. But even like the fact that Jung had first found like that, like the Hermetics talk about it of like law of gender of feminine and masculine energy, not sexuality, but that he founded the anima and animus. The shadow work, which I think so many people, which is funny because again, I think shadow work is so much of what Freud is talking about.
Yeah.
And then truly, because it's just like, yeah, that is a hard part of you, that's a dark part of you that you need to integrate. And again, Adler wise, like you can't suppress and ignore it because he'll run you for the rest of your life. But you need to shine light on things and bring consciousness to it to then evolve and move forward in life. To then become goal oriented lightly.
Right. Okay. And then we also have Jordan Peterson. But those are the big.
And for modern,
all told. I mean, he's the number one. I mean, we're both from Canada. He's the largest influencer in Canada. Period. I mean, besides Justin Bieber, I guess. But like
and Drake.
Yeah. So, but it's just like, okay, yeah.
And The Weeknd.
Yeah, I stand corrected.
Yeah.
But like he is. I would
in
say,
psychology for sure.
And with completely and arguably, again, I mean, obviously. The entertainers and the artists and media people wield a lot of power and influence for sure. But like Peterson's like an actual, like he holds influence.
I don't think he does anymore.
I don't disagree. But my point is that he is probably the biggest modern day psychologist that people at least are aware of. That have introduced
they're in the sphere
of
sphere of understanding.
He was, I mean, his basically recommended reading list is just like every book ever that Carl Jung wrote.
Yeah, so, I mean, my only thing with him is I would just say, because we're talking about such influential figures, but these are people who I think really added a new idea to the body of knowledge. My only argument then with Peterson is like he's just regurgitated everything he's learned and brought it back.
Yeah, and like modernized it, like made it more approachable.
Yeah.
I wouldn't,
it's just hard for me to put him in the same as Joseph Campbell.
No, of course. But those are just kind of the ones that, again, are more or less just stand out to me. Like, again, they've influenced so many people. But I think worthy mentions, list would include these figures. So after that, we've got Alfred Adler. So Adler is really interesting because Maslow, Abraham Maslow, there's Aaron Beck. So Aaron Beck was one of the gentlemen that made cognitive behavioral therapy, which was also made in large part by Albert Ellis, who made REBT, which I think is just a slightly more useful, like it's an easier therapy tool for most people to actually, like for me, I can remember it, and it's like the action steps. It's just more.
Holistic to the human experience? I don't know, because I haven't done any REBT.
Yeah. So it's just more organized.
Yeah.
I guess is the thing. So then you've got also Viktor Frankl, right? Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
So who also created logotherapy. So again, like these are all people that like created new things, but they were all inspired by Alfred Adler, who again was very goal oriented. And by the way, the people that made a lot of their therapies and frameworks were also the people who inspired basically like every, flow.
Yeah.
Obviously is like a modern
incredible
positive
book. I need to know his
psychology,
name.
right? So it's like there's so many, most of what we read, psychocybernetics is another one.
Yeah.
Those are all heavily influenced by the people that were influenced heavily by Alfred Adler.
Yeah.
So he was really the beginning of that movement. So I think that's really interesting. So, I mean, hey, we've come to the conclusion. I mean, like, who can we take off the list? Like, who is not a GOAT on this list? Freud, Jung, Adler. Is there anyone that we can do without? I mean, anything that they talk about here that we could throw away?
No, because to me, like, Jung is like the deep why of why humans have this like deep like need to find a purpose and like this like larger cosmological understanding that we're connected to something far greater. Him talking about the collective unconscious, as much as people want to dismiss or want to anything,
Right.
Every human knows there is something there's a deeper reality that we are attached to. And then I think Freud definitely gives the how of like it. I think it very much matters how you're brought up. I think the influences around you as a child matter. Up to the age of 7, that hit point of where they say child development really like has reached a pinnacle of like who you will be at some point.
Yeah.
But I think Adler being what do you do after that? Because you can't just run your life with the past. You have to move forward. So then it's the what am I going to do about this?
Yeah. And what does that look like, right? Which is the perfect bridge to someone who I think we should talk about next, not in this sitting, but in our next time that we meet and get to chat about some awesome books and some authors.
Great influential figures.
Yeah. So I think that bridges perfectly to Abraham Maslow, which is, I think, an obvious next step. And he is what I would say, if Freud is how, Jung is why, and then Adler is what, Abraham Maslow is when. Mm-hmm. He's absolutely when to do what, when you need to change your environment, when you need to go and scale it from there and actually have emotional needs met. And then from there, like self-esteem, self-actualization, then self-transcendence, which is something that is left out of the pyramid of hierarchy of needs, which we'll definitely get into in the next time we chat, because there's more than,
there's so much to cover.
This
was like a very topical overview.
Yeah.
Not any into the works these people have put into to change humans forever.
And then they all deserve their own massive deep dive. So
we'll definitely do that.
Until then.